But I'm from D.C. It's great to be back at Solly's hosting. I love this place. So I think the best way to start off is to catch up on the news since I was here last. So let's go across the pond, and you have to admit the royal family is not what it used to be. Think Meghan Markle and Princess Harry, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, were whining about South Park, the American comedy series, making fun of them, and they didn't do anything about it. So think about it. Queen Elizabeth faced down Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin, and the royal family now can't even stand up to Eric Cartman. But taking it down under, an Australian socialite was in the news for having sex with a teenage male 4 times in one day. When they asked his 55-year-old father, he said that he was capable of having sex 4 times in one night too, but then it later turned out in the interview he was talking about one of those nights in the Arctic that starts in early September and ends in late May. And then they asked the teenagers' friends how their sex life compared to their friends' sex life, and they said they were still holding their own. And then they asked them about, after hearing about their friends' activities, if it had changed their sexual fantasies at all, and they said no, they still had the same sexual fantasies, which was a partner. Now, coming back to the United States, Southwest Airlines reported that 55 passengers checked in using wheelchairs. Some people think that they were gaming the system because the handicapped get in first, but after Southwest's record on cancellations and delays, I think they were just lining up their alternate transportation early. Earlier this month, it was National Invasive Species Awareness Week, and in the state of Utah, the government put out a public service announcement asking people to do everything they could to get rid of the pests that came in because of how damaging they were and how they would destroy the environment, which is the way a lot of football fans in the D.C. area feel about Dan Snyder selling the team. Moving next door to Colorado, the Natural Resources Department in Colorado said it was ending its wolf repopulation program. They had introduced wolves hoping they would breed and reproduce, but the problem was they didn't research and realize that wolf's paws do not have opposable thumbs, so they could not swipe right on dating apps. And the governor of Colorado very proudly announced that his state was the first one to start selling cannabis products from vending machines. There's still a few kinks to be working out. When they put the vending machine at gas stations, a lot of the consumers start sucking on the air hose that's supposed to put air in the tires because they think that that machine is the world's biggest high-tech bong. But the good news from that is that they're selling so many more munchies and snacks and junk food from the result of the cannabis products from the vending machines that the state of Colorado has now declared its next holiday will be Dollar Taco Tuesday. And then in another something from it that's either good or bad to your perspective, it turns out that the dogs in Colorado are getting high because bits and pieces of the edibles are falling on the ground and they chew them up. This was first discovered in Boulder when someone threw a ball for his dog to catch and bring back, and the dog came back riding a skateboard. So coming farther east in Hudson, Ohio, the mayor of Hudson, Ohio has banned ice fishing because he had fears that there would be prostitutes coming out to visit the fishermen in the shacks. And this came from a classic case of 3 failures to communicate. The first failure to communicate was the mayor heard about the film Arctic Tale, which was about global warming by Al Gore, but the mayor never saw the film, and he thought Arctic Tale was going to be about an Eskimo prostitute. The second failure to communicate was the mayor saw an ad in the Nextdoor website that somebody was looking for a Siberian Husky, and he thought Siberian Husky was sleet string for a Russian prostitute with some meat on her bones. And then the third failure to communicate was he saw an advertisement for discounted ho-hos, and he thought that meant there would be a special on group sex with multiple prostitutes. Now, coming back to Washington, D.C., Georgetown University, my alma mater, was in the news. Hoya Saxa, baby. The admission scandal, it turned out a Georgetown student's parents paid for someone to take the math test for them. When they asked the student about that, he said he put half the blame on himself, half the blame on his parents, and the other half of the blame on the math teacher. And then they did a quick makeup exam. They said, we'll do an oral exam. And they said, what's 2 plus 2? And he said 4. And the coach said, please, give him another chance. Just give him another chance. But then after Georgetown lost to Villanova in the Big East tournament, nobody really cares anymore. Also local in the news, the Smithsonian Institute announced that a team of archaeologists had found snack remnants underneath the Roman Colosseum that were 1,900 years old. 1,900 years old. The good news is, the Twinkies have still not hit their expiration date. The bad news is, the fruitcake still tastes the same. Another scientific survey was underneath the pyramid at Giza. They found an underground tunnel using Earth-penetrating radar. The pyramid at Giza is one of the 7 wonders of the world, and for a long time was the highest man-built structure in the world. The scientists speculated that, we don't know what it is yet, but we think the tunnel could be the world's first indoor plumbing for a public urinal, and if that's true, we have finally located the source of the Nile. The Library of Congress announced that there was a new program to honor Black History Month and National Read a Book Month, where they were going to combine the best of black artists with the best of classic books. And they said the first one they were going to start off with was that classic comedy film Pootie Tang by Chris Rock. Pootie Tang, yes, sir. And they were combining Pootie Tang with everybody's favorite childhood book about that tubby little cubby all filled with fluff, and called the new version Winnie the Pootie Tang. And speaking of books, at a press conference, President Biden was asked by a reporter about the book that came out about his son Hunter, that talked about Hunter Biden's drug usage, his prostitutes, his alcoholism. President Biden said, see here, stop right now, that's pure libel. My son Hunter has never been accused of impersonating a member of Congress. Now, when I lived in D.C., I used to work on Capitol Hill, and I had top secret clearance twice in accordance with my duties. So someday I might go back, so I sort of like to plan out the interviews with your clearance officer. First thing they ask you is about your drug usage. They want to know who was there, where it was, what happened. And I'm going to say, well, I thought that was the whole point of using drugs, was to go get so fucked up you can't remember anything. And then the second thing, they'll ask you about current events, and they're going to ask me, well, who do you think is going to win the battle for Kiev between Russia and Ukraine, with Kiev being the capital city of Ukraine? And I'm going to say, my wife is such a terrible cook. When Putin tried her chicken Kiev, he called off the offensive. And then I know they're going to ask me about the China spy balloon. And I'm going to say, it came here in early February. It's obvious what happened. Saw its shadow and went back to China for 6 more weeks of bad weather. Now, another thing I loved about working on Capitol Hill was when I worked on Capitol Hill, I felt like I was a member of a thug rap group, a real OG, because of all the comparisons. The first comparison was the rapper, Nick Cannon. He has 12 children. The last committee I worked for in Congress, you needed 12 members for a quorum. When I worked for leadership, before we would always whip count before big boats, Sir Mix-a-Lot rapped in Baby Got Back about whipping big booties. And the third one, the rapper Lamar Kendrick, he rapped about having a white woman. My father had sex with a white woman. And there's my mother in the back at the bar ordering another whiskey sour, so wave to my mother, please. But in more good news, my mother's not here. What kind of sick perverts are you guys? For God's sake, she's 93 years old at home tonight. Now, in other big news, I got an Alexa. No, not a mail-order bride, not an inflatable love doll, but a personal assistant from Amazon. And, you know, like everyone, I'm a little worried about everything that big tech is learning about me. So I finally asked Alexa, should I worry about everything that Google, Uber, Facebook is learning about me? And Alexa replied, I knew you were going to ask me that. And then I came to find out that the reason Alexa knows so much about me is that she's having so many affairs with Amazon drivers and Amazon pilots that they have her listed as a fulfillment center. Take your time. So with that, I'm telling you, things are bad at home. The only action I get below my belt line is from a butt dial. I wouldn't have a sex life unless I set my cell phone on vibrate and put it in my front right pocket. But it looks like that party's going to end. I got a new cell phone. The first text I got was from the service provider, and it said from now on they just wanted to be friends. My wife, she got her new cell phone. The first text she got was from Amazon, saying as a result of everything she's doing with so many of their pilots and so many of their drivers, they now have her registered for a work-from-home position. Now, I tried to fix things, but, you know, a friend said, you know, you should take your wife to a romantic B&B where you've never been. So I pulled up 5 romantic B&Bs I'd never been to before, and I checked out, and my wife gave them 3 5-star reviews for her most recent visits. But Alexa came through for us. She recommended a counselor who was very big on communication. So the first thing the counselor said is that, you know, your wife needs to talk dirty to you during sex. My wife said, well, I tried to do that, but I couldn't get cell phone reception from the hotel room I tried to call from. He said, the next thing is your wife needs to tell you the next time she has an orgasm. And my wife said, well, for that to happen, I'd have to join her OnlyFans club. And she said the third thing to try is, you know, you would have sex in a room where the lights are not on, so you just focus on the touch and things because you can't see. Well, that seemed to be working because, you know, there was a lot of passionate scratching and a lot of playful biting, but then when we turned the light back on, it turns out the scratch marks and the bite marks came from the screws sticking out of the IKEA furniture. And then Alexa said, you know, so we're going to go with the last option, and the last option is what I call the Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee option, where you film yourself making love and we enter it in a contest with the others. So we did that. I was not real optimistic because she was very quiet and very inert, but guess what? 3 good things happened. First piece of good news, the video we introduced of my wife, you know, and I'm making love and her there so quiet and inert, took first place in the silent film division. Second piece of good news is based on her acting and performance in that, my wife was put up for the Best Acting Award by a mime. And the third piece of good news from that is based on her acting performance and how well the movie did, my wife signed a modeling contract with a company that makes mannequins. All right, now, I live in Chapel Hill now, which is very progressive. It's so progressive that Thursday is my favorite day of the week, so that's when they pick up recycling. And if I separate my recycling properly, they will leave me a nice little note. I mean, you have to love a place that's so progressive, even your garbage can gets a participation award. And the next thing they'll need is their business card with it, and so you gotta love that, because in New Jersey, picking up the trash is a mafia event, but in Chapel Hill, it's so progressive that they turn it into a networking event. And that has also helped me develop and hone my own personal philosophy in life, because on Mondays is when we pick up the lawn trimmings, like the branches, the twigs, and from that, I have now developed a personal philosophy from knowing that will happen on Monday, that it's always darkest before the dawn, so that's the best time to rake my leaves into my neighbor's front yard. And it always wasn't that way in Chapel Hill. They used to be tobacco roads, so you see pictures of all these old rednecks walking down Franklin Streets with cigarettes behind their ears. Now you see the millennials walking down Franklin Street with cannabis edibles behind their ears. All right, I'm Jonathan Yates, thank you. We got a great show. Up next is Chris Tao.